Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar hosted by Appraisal Buzz and sponsored by Incenter, the future of desktop appraisals. We've got over 260 people registered for this event, so we're going to wait about a minute for everyone to come in and make sure that everyone's here. In the meantime, this will be a very interactive webinar. Use the Q&A panel to let us know where you're calling in from. We have Josh Walitt and Mark Walser presenting with us as well today.
Hello, everybody.
We also have several poll questions, so be prepared for those. They'll pop up on your screen, and you'll be able to have interaction through that as well as the Q&A panel.
All right. Looks like we've got people from all over. We've got California, Oklahoma, Wyoming, a couple few people from Oklahoma, Chicago, California.
Yeah, I love Torrance and Oside from California, two places I used to live. So,
oh yeah,
shout out to all of you.
All right, we got Boston, Iowa, Alabama. Yeah, it's kind of moving too fast. I'm missing some here, but looks like this is sometimes I ask this on online classes I teach, and sometimes it's just one block in the country, but this is a wide variety here.
Yeah, it looks like we have over 150 people in already right now. So I think we should go ahead and get started. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us for the future of desktop appraisals. We've got Mark Walser and Josh Walitt today, and this is sponsored by Incenter. Josh, I'll hand it over to you to get started.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. So I am Josh Walitt. I'm a certified residential appraiser out of Colorado, and I do consulting work now. So I do work for various companies, and one company that I work very closely with is Incenter. And so Mark and I talked last year about RemoteVal, which was already being in development from Incenter. And we talked about UsePap, and we talked about inspections, and we talked about reports, and we talked about all the issues that sort of relate to appraisers. And it's really been an exciting journey. And as you're all very well aware of, there's change. There's always change, right? And so we have different technologies out there. And so what we want to do is show you what RemoteVal is, because it's not the same as maybe everything else you may have looked at, right? So I'm going to give Mark a chance to introduce himself, and then we'll go ahead and start in on the material.
Yep, thanks. I'm Mark Walser. I'm president of Incenter Appraisal Management, one of the brain trusts behind the solution. And Josh and others have been so kind to input on it and help create it as well. So we're happy to not only present it, but really to get your feedback. We have active RemoteVal orders going today, and there's more iteration and more technology advancement that comes, of course, as one thing about technology is that it moves at the speed of light. So Josh and I were commenting earlier today how the measurements capability in RemoteVal just in the last 3 months has gone through about 5 different advancements, and there's so much more now that we can do with LiDAR and other things, and we're going to keep on advancing it. So I think you're going to see a lot of evolution here. So consider this webinar a starting point, maybe your introduction to it. But the thing I'm most excited about it is that appraisers are going to be the ones who help us push and evolve this. So as you use it in different scenarios, you're going to really hopefully come back to us and say, it worked really great over here and over here. Then I hit this scenario and it wasn't quite so great. But if you did this and this and this, it would be. So really, really excited about that feedback as well over the next few months. And as desktop appraisals come into play on the GSE side, and of course, we see the continuing movement of the acceptance of remote appraisals in other parts of our business. It's a really exciting time for all of us.
Yeah. That is so true. I'm going to go ahead and advance to the first slide, which is actually one of the polls that Jim, when he was introducing us, mentioned. So you'll see the slide, and the poll will pop up right here. So you have a special pop-up on your screen. And be sure you are muting yourself if there's any sort of feedback there. But we're talking about receiving photos already taken and receiving sort of characteristics property characteristics report from a third party, or do you prefer to control the inspection to gather the data yourself? And it's split. You know, people feel differently about this. The first option is considered more of a hybrid, right? Where a third party is gathering a floor plan, they're taking pictures, they're sending it in, and those are then provided to you. Whereas the more traditional approach is to have the appraiser perform that data collection yourself as well. So let's see if I'm going to go ahead and move the slide, but Jim will show us some results once the poll is completed, and I think I'll be able to see this here. We did have a question already asking if this is being recorded, and yes, it is being recorded. So thanks, Brian, for asking that. All right. So when Mark and I first talked, probably about a year ago, it might have been around that time frame, we really took on some core focuses for RemoteVal, and that is to support, not replace, the appraiser. So the valuation portion, of course, is the appraiser, and there's dispute over, well, who should be inspecting, right? Well, of course, an appraiser can, but we're seeing some scenarios, some products where the appraiser doesn't, okay? And we're not trying to push them aside. There's probably room for a lot of different scopes, but what we're looking at is a way to keep the appraiser central to the appraisal process. So we're taking a look at enhancing and advancing the role of the appraiser. So this is sort of an evolution. We're sort of taking a look at this as the next step. So here's our traditional inspection. How does that traditional inspection look with technology so that we can better turn times for our businesses? We can increase our overall capacity. We'll also take a look even at scenarios where this is being used for the trainee scenario, where the supervisor doesn't spend as much windshield time as the trainee might, right? So we'll take a look at those types of scenarios. So let's take a look at RemoteVal.
I just want to check real quickly before we jump in. There's a couple of folks in the Q&A who have said, I'm unable to see any slides or connect to audio. Has the presentation started yet? And that was at 2:07. So I just want to double check if we can get Jim, if we have a way of verifying that most everybody on here is able to see everything.
Yeah. We had so many people responding to where they were in the US. So I'm hoping that's just a few people with maybe some problems on their end. But yeah, Jim, thanks for maybe checking into that. Let's see a few comments there. If you're able to see and hear, let's just get a couple comments there. So Mark and I know we're not just talking to ourselves. I'm going to continue, but I'll watch for some comments. Hopefully we do have something popping up and confirming that folks can see and hear us. Yeah. Okay. So we have different scopes, right? We have this, what I like to call the spectrum of inspections, right? We have that full appraisal, so-called full appraisal, where we look at the interior, we look at the exterior. This is what we would call traditional, right? We all sort of know what we're saying when we say a full appraisal. And then it goes down to the exterior from street. Then it goes down to the hybrid, where I get data, but I'm not actually playing any part in it. And then we of course have the waiver, where there's no inspection at all. So we have that spectrum. And what we're saying is, okay, is there a way to get the velocity that people had hoped hybrids would bring, but keep the appraiser in it? And so that's why we have remote real-time inspections, where I am the appraiser, I'm sitting at the desk, and I connect remotely to view the house. It's similar to a physical inspection. It's not the same. And we're going to take a look at how it's the same, but we're also going to be aware of there are differences as well, right? So let's take a look. And I know some of you are going to have questions because you're thinking, well, how in the world could that happen? Let's look at it, and there will be time for questions. You can type your questions. Jim will try to tag those. And of course, we'll have time set aside at the end as well. So, okay, let's start at the beginning. Remote real-time inspection. What is that? this is where I'm the appraiser. I'm sitting at my desk. I want to control the inspection. And this was a key tenet of RemoteVal. This was a central component. I don't want to simply receive information and have no input on what's happening. I don't want to lose control over, I need to look at this. I have questions about that. Let's go look at this more clearly and closer. What's going on here, right? I want that ability to take a look. And then all the way, I'm at my desktop, all the way at the house, whether it's 15 minutes away or whether it's, in my case, areas I've worked 2 hours away, there is a remote device, a cell phone, held by that on-site person. Okay. So I am actually viewing the property. I'm saying, can we turn left? Can we turn right? Maybe not in those words, right? But I'm saying, let's look over here. Let's go inside, go outside, and things like this.
And on that note, there's a question in the Q&A. What about amenities outside? The answer is yes, you can see all of those because you're directing the homeowner to just walk outside. And you can have them walk around their property, turn left, turn right, see the street scene, walk through or around the backyard through the fence. Show me the pool. Do you have a fence around it? Show me the air conditioning. I want to see a close-up of that. In our video demo, there's actually a sample of Josh and I doing that. So there's actually a full way for you to view and at the same time ask questions about what you're seeing. And that's a very important point. Probably segues nicely for what you're about to say next, Josh.
Yeah. We're really talking about, well, who's that person, right? Because sometimes, there's so much about RemoteVal. People jump on the questions, and this is a question that people often jump on. Well, who's there? Who's going out there? Well, homeowner is an easy, an easy solution, right? The person's already at their house. You are in real time observing the property. This is not something they're sending you and you're not involved in. You are actually, and we'll take a look at it, you're actually in charge of clicking the button on your desktop to capture the photo with their phone. So you're not only saying, hey, could you please grab that photo for me? You're not. You're saying, I am grabbing the photo right now. And I'm pressing virtually the button on their phone. So it's not a hybrid in that sense that hybrids are just sending someone else out and then you're disconnected from it and simply receiving information. Could be a real estate agent, could be a contractor. Some of the time, there may be situations where you say, hey, I want to take a look at that room again, or I didn't see that whole room, or what's behind that locked door, right? And you're able to control that process. I've literally, and you probably have, during a physical inspection, I was told, well, that's my spouse's office. It's locked. And I said, okay. The client ordered this in a way that they're expecting me to look at all of the rooms. Do you want me to come back and do it? Or how would you like to handle it, right? We would handle it the same way with RemoteVal. We would say, okay, well, do you want to have, tomorrow, do you want to meet again on this app and I can take a look in that room? How would you like to handle it, right? So we do it the same way, but I want to really focus on the trainee appraiser scenario. And this has gotten quite a few large appraisal firms excited because how many of you have trained appraisers and then you had to accompany them physically well past when they were competent to observe and inspect a property themselves, right? And it's not the GSE policy. GSE policy is fine with trainees going on their own, right? It's not necessarily the states, because at a certain cutoff, the states say, okay, most states do, they say, okay, you can now stay in your office, the trainee can go out alone, right? There's a certain threshold in different states. It's usually the clients. And what Incenter has done is they have sort of opened the eyes of a lot of clients, and the clients say, well, gosh, we'd really like 2 sets of eyes on the property. And you say, well, here's 2 sets of eyes. The trainee can go out, and the supervisor can stay there and put their eyes on it virtually. Right.
And if I can input on that as well, on one aspect of it. Just, we've always wondered sometimes, why do trainee appraisers and the reports that they create, why do some investors perhaps don't want those or put their own restrictions on it? Some of that has to do with the way a trainee appraiser is perceived, right, on the back end with the rating agencies and others. It's not considered as strong a product, from an MBS perspective, when the originating appraiser, the signing appraiser, didn't do the inspection. So this is a way to bridge that gap and help the acceptability of the trainee. There's a bunch of questions also popping up here. We are going to get to all of them. So they're good questions, and we'll definitely do that. Just in the interest of time, I'll answer a few as we go, and then toward the end, Josh and I will address them. But first one I want to just quickly answer. Matt, you asked a question: is there geotagging to make sure the on-site individual is at the correct property? For appraisers who appraised the wrong property, this is probably an important point. Yes, there is geo and meta tagging, and we'll get into that. And then there's a couple other questions here, which we'll get onto in just a second. Go ahead, Josh.
Good questions. Yeah, good questions. So think as we're thinking of this, a lot of you are here because of the 1004 desktop announcement. Well, RemoteVal can assist in 1004 desktop scenarios. 1004 desktop, for those of you who don't know, is a relatively new form. All right. It has different pre-printed language and so on. And what we also want to leave you with is the understanding that RemoteVal came about well before the 1004 desktop was announced as the go forward type form. It has a variety of uses. All right. So I want you to keep in mind that trainee scenario, because we'll look at another slide where who can do what for which forms. But I also want you to think of repair and disasters, right? Lenders changing policies to say, okay, we can have a remote inspection for this type of completion, maybe only a certain type of completion, only a certain type of issue, or certain types of repairs or disaster inspections, right? Where maybe everyone can't move around really well, but we can at least collect information. Now, we would want to always make sure that our scopes in these particular cases are agreed to by our clients, right? We're not proposing that anybody say, well, they told me I have to physically go out, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use RemoteVal. That's not what this is for. This is for scenarios where the clients are saying, yeah, we see the potential for that. We see the velocity that could be gained. And so we can have RemoteVal on these particular types of assignments. But private lenders, totally outside of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac world, already doing appraisals with RemoteVal, mortgages, home equity, portfolio, default servicing, insurance removal, fix and flips. It's been really big on that. Fix and flips, do we need them going out both times? Maybe up front they do RemoteVal and the final inspection is done physically, or vice versa. So there's a lot of different flexibilities that clients have when they're taking a look at appraisers using RemoteVal.
Yeah, and I would add, we're also generating opportunities for RemoteVal too. So we have a sister company, Incenter Tax Solutions, that's doing property tax appeal, and they're expanding pretty rapidly. Those types of appraisals are sometimes very much candidates for a RemoteVal type of scenario. So there's definitely work that we can provide in addition to the traditional stuff for a lot of you who are on this call, if you wanted to be part of those types of panels and get those types of assignments.
Good point. So focus on control of the inspection. Okay. You view the property through live video stream, live on their phone. You're talking with them and so on. The video is actually recorded on secure servers, on the RemoteVal servers. You have access to that. You can review that, sort of revisiting the property if you didn't make enough notes on the layout or this or that or what have you. The pictures that you decide to take, you say, okay, yeah, you've got the front photo. Good. Why don't you hold there? You take the photo. That's geographically stamped, time stamped, date stamped, so they're at the right property. Okay. You go ahead and you measure the interior and exterior dimensions, or as needed, for whatever type of property you're looking at, or you verify a provided plan. Now, when we're talking about the Fannie Mae scenario that they've just announced, the intent by a lot of the parties involved are that they're going to be providing a floor plan to you. And maybe it has come from interested party. Maybe you're just not so sure if there's been changes to the property since then, and you want to verify the information. So you take verifying measurements. You might not actually be drawing the entire shell yourself because you've been given something, but you say, well, is this accurate? Right? I'm going to take some verifying measurements and take a look to see if it is. You're basically using RemoteVal as a sort of sketch pad and notepad in that way. You can note where the rooms are, where the interior walls are, and things like that. And you'll actually see some moving pictures here later in the presentation where you can actually get a really good idea of how do these features like measuring and taking pictures and things like that, how does that actually sort of work? How does that feel? And we'll kind of see a little bit of that. And importantly, we're having that conversation.
A couple of questions to break up the slides, and then we'll move to the next one. First of all, from Dan Karras. Great question, Dan. I'm going to respond head on to you on this one. Most of my homeowner borrowers would have no clue how to use their phone to do this. What do you do then? One of the first considerations of RemoteVal when we put it together was it not only has to keep the appraisers in charge, but there's a phrase that I come from a mobile development background. Back in the burgeoning days of mobile data in the early 2000s, we had a catchphrase in development for mobile applications. Catchphrase was, it has to be stupid easy to use. It has to be so simple that anyone can use it. And if you can't make it that easy, then you're going to lose a lot of people in the process. So this is why to this day, despite how advanced phones are getting, we're all still using text messages because dang it, that's the simplest, fastest, easiest way to do a message and communication to somebody, despite all the fun apps that there are out there. Everyone still uses it. So this application does not require the homeowner to take pictures. I use the phrase human tripod. They literally are standing there with the phone after they connect to you, and they're just pointing where you tell them to point and holding still because you're capturing the photos. So if they know how to take a picture with their phone, that's all you need to be able to do any sort of RemoteVal session with your appraiser. As long as you can hold your phone and walk around without falling over, you're pretty much good to go. And we have been doing this, just for some context, Dan, we have been doing it with every age demographic you can imagine, in home inspections, loss draft inspections, with obviously CDAR, disaster inspections, and now, of course, with RemoteVals. Everybody seems to be able to hold their phone and use it really well. Also, just consider the next generation of home buyer that's coming in, right? We talk about millennials a lot. They do make up probably the largest percentage of home buyers right now, but the new demographic that is just over the horizon and coming into the picture now is Gen Z. You're talking about something like 80 to 85 million users, depending on who you believe, who are going to be coming into the workforce over the next 5 to 7 years. Every one of them is also a digital native, knows how to use their phones. So they're expecting this type of experience, and they want it to be easy, but for them to use their phone, we're not 10 years ago or 15 years ago when phones were very basic and people were still learning it. Now, my 5-year-old, my 10-year-old, they're able to do things on phones that we could only dream of. So I think you'll find the acceptance of this will be very high. And then one last question there. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm sorry if I butchered it. Chris Ann Young. And why do they want to pay an appraiser when they're doing all the work? That's what they will say. The answer to that will come in the form of speed. So the intent of RemoteVal was also to create speed. So if you can tell a homeowner, look, you can wait for me for a week and a half to come out, or I can connect with you on your phone and we can just take some verifying pictures and photos and a few measurements, and then I can have my inspection done and get this appraisal back in a couple more days after that. That's something that almost everybody will do and really embrace. So when you combine the fact that they're not taking the photos, they're really observing and just talking with you and holding the phone, along with the ease of use of the app and then the ability just to get some speed in the process, that's the incentive for most people. And there's a couple more questions that have come and on the amenity side, Josh. So I think we'll hit those in a second because we can talk about verifying how appliances work and that sort of thing as we go through the presentation.
Okay.
So I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. All right. Yeah, let's move to the next slide and we'll kind of see if there's some common questions coming up as well. So, all right. So let's take a look at the inspection. Let's remember this is actually already being used. Perhaps some of you are on Incenter's panel and you've received orders like this in certain markets. So it's already been used on repair and disaster, but also on appraisals. And we'll actually talk about the first appraisal inspection in some of these slides. So I like to point out to people that what we really have tried to do is try to take a look at what is the existing sort of paradigm. What's the existing process? All right. We meet the owner, right, or the occupant. We probably have some conversations with them. We introduce, what's the process going to be? What are we doing? We take a look at the interior and the exterior. We take measurements. We're in control of the photos, right? We ask questions. When did this happen to your house? When did you remodel? Details like that. Well, all of those things we can accomplish with RemoteVal. Is it the same as a physical inspection? No, it's not identical to a physical inspection. Are we disclosing that we did something different? Of course, we're disclosing what we've done. It has to be acceptable to our client in terms of the scope of work they required. But it's similar to that physical inspection. Now, are we feeling if the heat is coming out of the radiators? No, we can't do that, right? We can't feel if the heat is blowing out of the vents and things like that. So there's differences. But again, these are being ordered by banks when there's certain risk scenarios, right? So the intended use is always a consideration. All right, so let's take a look where a floor plan is provided to us. A floor plan or some sort of sketch is provided to us. We connect to the homeowner. We record that visual walkthrough. We confirm measurements. We confirm the layout, and we'll talk about how we can measure. I have seen a few questions on measurements, so we can actually do that where we're verifying or confirming what was provided to us that's already maybe been established by someone else, if there's already been a previous sketch or something like that. So let's say the floor plan was provided and you just weren't sure, well, is that still, I don't know what the date is on this. I don't know when this was done. Whatever the case is, you say, I want to verify. So we verify layout. We're going around the exterior. We see the property. We can verify some measurements and things like that. Now, let's say the floor plan is not made available to you. All right. Now, we know that in the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac type world, the intent is when it's ordered, they're providing some sort of sketch, but that's not always going to happen, especially with private lenders. Private lenders are not always going to have a sketch. They're not always working in that way. And they're saying, look, we are fine with RemoteVal and we're going to actually be able to sketch it ourselves. So there's actually ways of measuring it using RemoteVal. So single story is much more straightforward, just like it is today. It's usually easier with a single story, right? We measure that exterior. We can actually have a starting point right in RemoteVal where there is data and information. It might look somewhat like some county record sketches that you might have. It's called Eagle View, and it's giving you that sort of starter shell, and you can verify measurements like that. Then you take a look inside, like measuring the garage, so we can figure out, well, how much comes out of that shell, right? What do I have to take out of there in order to figure out my gross living area? And we're recording, of course, our walkthrough. We can watch that later, as we've talked about. Second story is going to vary. So there are ways we can measure from the interior, just like we do now, and we can add on to the walls. Sometimes if it's just a rectangle on a rectangle, obviously that scenario would be much easier, right? Much more straightforward, much quicker. Complex properties, there are going to be cases where you look at one and you say, this is just too complex. I don't have enough data available to me. And I think we need to upgrade this to a physical visit, right? Similar to a question that we had earlier, where the person was questioning, well, what if they don't want you? What if they don't want you doing it this way? I don't remember exactly how it was specified, but well, then you go back to the client and say they don't want to do it this way, right? So there are going to be times where there's an upgrade, right? And not all assignments are going to desktops sides, right? There will still be physical visits. All right, lots of questions on the measuring. Like I said, we're going to take a look at the measuring. We'll actually get a feel for how the app does the measuring. We'll see that on our slides. Back in October, I was lucky enough to sit in with Wayne Wright, an appraiser out of Connecticut, and he did the first RemoteVal inspection for a private lender appraisal. It took about 30 minutes. The approach he took was he had a sketch, a shell, if you will, the exterior, and he verified those measurements. Okay, with the occupant, I think it was a tenant actually. And then he was able to produce the sketch or floor plan that the client required, took the pictures in each room, was able to interview and ask questions of the occupant. And here's just a few quotes. He was talking about how he's always sort of looked ahead. And he said, I was one of the first to use digital cameras in Connecticut. Some of us can remember when, it was pasting, and then it was some very early digital, and then it was digital, right? First to transmit appraisals electronically. And when Mark approached him, he thought it was a great idea and he didn't hesitate. So that it was kind of exciting to talk with him and to kind of watch the process and kind of relive that process with him.
Scenario was a good one too, because the tenant in the property had COVID and so was quarantined under Connecticut law for 14 days. So that's part of the reason why they were so desperate for some other option, because they couldn't get an appraisal done. Nobody would go and nobody could get in. So this was the perfect answer for that.
Right. Yeah. So what was really good is, he had that starting framework to work from. He verified measurements. Said, yep, this is a reliable sketch that I can use. In this, he also said appraisers never like change, and I don't even think that's appraisers. I think that's anybody. That's human nature. We never really like change. We feel like, I like the way I'm doing it and things like that. He says in his case, he says this is much better than hybrids. You get better data. You can do more reports, easier to schedule. He likes the flexibility. Okay, so there is, again, room in that spectrum, right? When we're taking a look at full appraisals all the way down to the waivers where there's no appraisal, no new appraisal even being ordered, right? Are there more opportunities to keep the appraiser involved in that spectrum? And that's what we're looking at for RemoteVal.
With this slide, I also want to take the opportunity to address Philip's question. The question is, how have you addressed any privacy or security issues associated with using RemoteVal? So I think one of the things to understand about video and pictures, first of all, it is permission based. So there is that. When the homeowner gets a RemoteVal invitation, those come a couple of hours and also about 24 hours beforehand. We're telling them your appraisers are going to be contacting you. Open up the windows of your home, have the lights on, have it as uncluttered as possible so you can walk freely. And by the way, you are going to give permission for them to take pictures and record. When they actually connect, there's a little pop-up that comes in and says, if you as the appraiser on your end selected the recording feature, there will be a live pop-up on there that says the appraiser has requested to record the session, and the consumer can allow or disallow that with a button click. I would talk to the consumer, because you are going to be connected with them before you even start the inspection, talking with them, and let them know, why are you recording it? For me, recording is not necessary, but it is nice to be able to revisit the property, I think. And also to just kind of go back through and see everything, right? And the interaction is very nice. The second thing is, we got to make that recording and the pictures that you take part of appraiser work file. That was part of our charter in doing this too. So, we're Incenter has a pretty weapons grade infrastructure from an InfoSec standpoint. We serve 6 of the top 10 banks in the country as an MSA vendor on a variety of fronts, including title, settlement, valuation, and others. So we are storing this in appraiser work file for us, which is in a very, very secure environment. It is not being shared. It's not being seen by other employees here. We're not sending it elsewhere to someone else to look at your photos and videos and put hands on it and try and figure things out with it or create a floor plan. We're not doing any of that because, first of all, that's private work file data, number one. And number two, you have to be very, very careful about what you do with consumer photos and consumer video. You really don't want that stuff flying around the internet in a fashion where multiple people in multiple hands, even if they're your employees, could see it. So we're very, very circumspect about that this is appraiser work file and it's only accessible by the appraiser who took it. And it's only going to be used in that manner. And what you're going to create is an appraisal, right? And when you send that appraisal over, it's going to be whatever your appraisal has on it. You're not sending the video to the lender. You're not sending, maybe as Josh pointed out earlier, all the photos to the lender. You're going to be actually controlling what goes out. And then there's security around how that is put out. And just kind of make sure that
there's a question here about comp photos. So what we want to remember is, first, if we're talking about, and we'll take a look at some forms, the forms, kind of a grid of the forms. If we're using the traditional forms, yeah, you're taking comp photos. And if we're talking about RemoteVal being used with a trainee on those, because we did have a comment earlier saying, I don't have a trainee, but there are people out there who have trainees. Those comp photos, you're still going to take the comp photos. It will be the trainee taking those comp photos. They'll be doing all the field work as on those normal ones. If we're talking about the new 1004 desktop form, the comp photos are not an issue. There's no requirement to drive by the comp. So there's a point here saying, hey, we'd still have to take comp photos when we're linking to the homeowner. So I might as well go to the subject too. No, you're not going to the comp photo to take the comp photos. That's the point of the desktop, is that you are able to actually stay at your desk the entire time. So keep that in mind as far as comp.
2 more quick questions before we hit to the next slide. Sherry, you had a similar question. Is the recording of the inspection available for the download to our own file, or is it only available online? This time we're making it available online only because, again, for security and privacy issues, we want to make sure you only have access to it, but you can do it online. So we don't want that flying around everywhere. Now, if there is an issue where you need to download it for some sort of insurance or other need, we can definitely accommodate that, but that'll be on a case by case. Richard, the homeowner would have to download an app too. That could be a hurdle. Great point. We thought of that. The text message that comes to the homeowner, this is all done through text or email. When you click the link, it actually detects whether or not you have it on your phone. So the homeowner has the choice with the messages we send beforehand. Hey, in preparation for your inspection, download the app. It takes 2 minutes to download it off the App Store. If they don't do it by the time you connect with them, when they click that text message, it's smart enough to detect that RemoteVal is not on the phone. It will give them instructions and it will launch them right to the link on the App Store where they can click to download. As soon as it downloads and comes into the phone, it then directs them to go back to the text message and click it again. And that auto launches it. So they don't have to type in passwords or IDs or anything like that. So that it's a very, very easy process to jump right into the inspection with the appraiser. Either way, whether you have pre-installed it or not.
Good point.
There's other questions, Josh. We'll get to them. Let's just for the sake of time, let's keep moving and then we'll.
Okay, great. All right. So there shouldn't be confusion, but there often is. Does USPAP allow remote inspections? Well, USPAP does not require any inspection. It would require an inspection if your client says you must physically inspect the property, right? So we just need to be aware of our engagement letters, aware of what form they're actually asking us to perform, right? Because a lot of the time the form has assignment conditions on it. The key piece is that we must disclose the level of inspection, right? So we want to be very clear in our reports, if there was a trainee involved, on one of the traditional forms, or if it's on the new 1004 desktop, explain, I connected, with technology to the homeowner, asked questions, verified some measurements, but not all, or sketched the entire thing myself, whatever you did, make it clear. right? Make it clear on there. And it is important to understand that, especially without requirements for who does what inspections in USPAP, trainees can complete physical inspections, right? It depends on the scope of work requirements for any particular assignment. And by the way, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have no prohibition against trainees going out alone. It's taken a lot of work, but Mark has talked to a lot of clients and have actually won over a lot of lending clients to see the light, so to speak, and say, oh, trainees can go out alone. Okay, we can do that, right? So here's sort of a breakdown on some of the forms. All right, trainee could assist really on any of them if it's acceptable, if that extent of assistance is fine in the context of the engagement letter, agreement with your client. This new 1004 desktop form is where you could link to a homeowner, to the agent, to these other people who may be on site to perform the observation.
And let me interject there real quickly, because Pete asked a question of, shortening the turn time. If you have to have a trainee doing the inspection, taking the comp photos, wouldn't shorten the process in his opinion? In some cases it may, just because if you have a trainee and you can leverage them and send them to a different property and oversee them remotely while you're doing another one, you can actually extend your capacity. But with the remote desktop application, and also with just a full RemoteVal on a private lending scenario or a non-GSE scenario at this point, you can definitely do it direct with the homeowner and not have to worry about a trainee in the mix, just you and that homeowner direct. Or I like to call it lender designated user. It can be, as Josh pointed out at the beginning of this presentation, it could be a real estate agent, could be a contractor, could be a borrower builder representative. If it's a fix and flip property, it's the flipper themselves. There's a whole bunch of scenarios where you can just have that person at the property connected to you while you're sitting in your office and just do this remotely and save the time. That's exactly what in the example shared, Wayne did with that appraiser. Wayne, the appraiser in Connecticut, did with that tenant, right? That was a fix and flip loan. The borrower, who was the owner of the home, really, or the aspiring owner of the home to fix and flip and rehab it, couldn't get into his own house because of the tenant living there with COVID, right? So you can definitely save that time and turn it around. Wayne was able to complete that appraisal note in a couple of days from start to finish.
Yeah. So there's definite velocity. It's going to depend on your office, how your office operates, and things like that. So there are different considerations, but certainly the potential for velocity is there, and appraisers who have done it have seen that materialize. So personal inspection. Quick note on personal inspection. People have asked me. They said, "Well, wait a second. The ASB is considering changing the definition of personal inspection." Really doesn't matter what they change the definition to. If they take the definition out, it really isn't critical to this, because we always have to disclose in our reports the type and extent of our inspection process, and USPAP doesn't dictate a minimum level of inspection regardless of whether there is a definition in USPAP or not. Okay, here is our second poll question. So let's see if we can get that hold up here. There we go. Great. So have you ever performed any type of desktop appraisal?
And while those questions are being answered in the poll, there have been several questions about the devices that RemoteVal supports. That would be iPhones, 7 series or higher, and Android phones running Nougat OS or higher. Can use RemoteVal for photos and measurements. So basically, you're talking about a phone that's about 4 years old or newer. Most people upgrade their phones every 2 years. The vast majority of people right now have phones that are less than 2 years old. And of course, trade-ins occur usually every 1.5 to 2 years with most carriers. So people upgrade automatically just to keep their service. So it's amazing how many iPhone 12 Pros are out there and how many advanced Android devices are out there. So you won't have to worry about the horsepower of the device too much.
And, I never got back to anybody on the first poll that we took. This was, do you want to receive the information from someone else, or do you want to control the data collection? And it was over 70% said they want to control the data collection. We know that we are specialized. There are times when it's very critical to have someone who has the background, has the experience to gather that information. Then this last poll that we still have on the screen here, have you ever performed any type of desktop appraisal? And it's literally the same. It's just over 70% saying yes. Okay. And that's, sometimes I have a group that I'm talking to and almost no one's done any sort of desktop appraisal. This is really a kind of a welcome sign, because we are seeing, again, that spectrum. A lot of the items on the spectrum, the appraiser isn't really, maybe on the waivers, we could say, right? The appraiser isn't being involved, but doing a desktop now, maybe taking a look at this desktop with a RemoteVal, where we're able to verify the information from disinterested parties, meaning us, right? We are able to see it ourselves and not take photos and things from other people who might be an interested party. Okay, so let's take a look at how it works. This isn't a training session. We're not actually training on it. We'll actually have our first training session, our first sort of formal training session on the 3rd of February. But let's just sort of take a look. The appraiser at the desk, on the left in this case, connects with someone at the site. Okay, they're at the house. You can see they're holding their phone. All right, so it downloads the app. It's pretty quick, pretty easy. Basically, this person would be on the desk. The appraiser would just send them a text link or email them a text link. Okay. And they would have that app downloaded very quickly and easily. So there is verification. We may have talked about this before. I know I did see a question come up about geotagging and date tagging photos. You can see that they're standing in the right spot. You can actually pull up your GIS or your aerial mapping or whatever it is you use on a daily basis and see where the property is. And then you can see, are they standing in the right spot? Is that phone in the right place, right? Or are they at the next door neighbor's house who has totally remodeled their kitchen and bathrooms, right? So we know it's the right property. Now, every image, we can see here a few maps that automatically populate, but every image we take, when we choose to include a photograph, is going to have the date and the time and all the geotagging on it. So you'll know not only that you saw it while using your desktop, you will actually have it imprinted, stored on the photos themselves as well.
And some of the best practices for people who've gone before there as well is they don't obviously just rely on the photos and the geotags and everything else that we're putting there. You can send the homeowner out first thing. Just say, hey, walk out the front door, walk down your driveway. This is what we do in remote vals and in remote inspections too. Turn around so I can see the house. Hold still. I'm going to take a picture. You click with your mouse, you take the picture. Then you say there's an address plate on that house or on your mailbox. You can actually zoom in. There's a zoom feature. So you can just say, hold still. I'm going to zoom in on that. You can grab the address plate. Then you can just have them turn left and turn right and get the street scene, right? So you can actually start getting some context and put some additional photos around those geotags very, very quickly to show that you actually saw it for yourself.
Right. Good point. A lot of people have asked questions. What are you talking about measuring? What do you mean measuring? How am I measuring? Who's measuring, right? So let's say, going back to the scenario, you're not sending out a trainee. We're talking about a pure desktop, 1004 desktop. Let's say it could be ordered by banks that are not selling to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, or it could be something where they're intending to go out to the secondary market, right? You are provided a sketch. You say, you know what? I need to make sure of, what it measures, verify the measurements, or I'm not provided anything. All I have is sort of this county sketch or an eagle view that really just shows the shell. I need to know what size the garage is, right? And so on and so forth. So, okay, we're going to need to do some measurements. And so with that person's help, they can actually point at the perimeter. They can actually do just crossways, measure a square. If it's a square garage, you can just quickly just measure crossways and figure out what the square is. And then you'll know what to subtract out. And in this particular case, on the left, we see a sort of a 3D measuring, a virtual measuring tape. And then there's also LiDAR, like for certain iPhones that have the LiDAR in them, you can actually do the measurements up at the ceiling, corner to corner, okay?
Question there, does the 1004 desktop sketch require area calculations, Josh?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of detail yet for the 1004 desktops, but if we are taking a look at the standard instructions that Fannie Mae has always had with the traditional 1004, it is that showing the calculations, the sort of the area breakdowns, right, of how it was all calculated would be something you'd want to have. For example, if you take your sketching information from, let me just get it back to here. So let's say you take your measurements, you put them on RemoteVal, you're using that as your notepad, and you then go into your normal software. You want to use that to sketch out your floor plan. It's going to calculate that for you, right? Just like it normally would have. But here's a little bit showing sort of in motion. You can see how it just sort of stretches the tape as you go. All right, and you can actually take a look at, okay, it saves each one. It sort of draws it as you go. So you can actually save those measurements. If you are sketching in your own software, which I know a lot of appraisers prefer to, they want to have a consistent process, sketching, whatever I normally use, then you have all your measurements down, and you can sketch it, throw in your interior walls from your walkthrough, and so on. Again, many times you are being provided a sketch, but you might need your own photos because perhaps the photos came from an interested party and there is no disinterested source. The 1004 desktop, specifically, it has pre-printed language. It says, look, if you get information from an interested party, you need to verify it through a disinterested source, right? So this is a way of performing that type of verification.
George asks what measuring software you're using and how accurate is it? It's our measuring software. It's quite accurate. There is a video actually on our RemoteVal site of Josh actually doing some measurements of a wall and showing you the difference between a physical tape measure using the LiDAR measurement in RemoteVal and just using the standard 3D scanning measurement as well. And you'll see that they're all right in line with each other.
Here's just an example of walking through. You're talking with that occupant. They're walking into a new room. You say, okay, let's take a look all around the room. Yeah, right there. Why don't you hold still? I'm gonna grab that as the photo, something like that, right? So you're just kind of going through. And by the way, we've gone through so many, as Mark mentioned, so many iterations of the measuring. We're constantly looking at improvements to, can we make it even faster, even easier, and things like this. So as we go, it's gotten better and better. I hope you'd agree, Mark. I think you would. And we're also going to see even more changes to how we scan rooms, how we scan areas, so we're able to get this data faster and just with more ease as well.
Yeah, the fun part of the tech part of this is that it just keeps on expanding. It's not like the next generation of software is a year from now, right? It's literally months from now. So one of the examples that Josh is talking about here is we had some appraisers give us feedback and say, it's the floor perimeter around the room. That's a really cool measurement. But if I want to save some time and the room is a rectangle or a square, I don't want to measure all four corners. And sometimes there's stuff in the corners, like they push a corner table up there. So even though, there's a question here in the Q&A, can you go through bushes and shrubs? Yes, you can. The digital measuring tape will go through whatever object. You can even go through walls. But if you're looking for the actual, the most accurate thing, you want to be able to put that measurement stick right in the corner. And if that corner is blocked off with an end table, it's a little rough to sit there and just kind of have the homeowner sort of figure that out. So we introduced cross wall measurement now with all phones. So you can just have the homeowner pick an open wall, drop the marker on it, have him swing across. It'll draw a line across the room. That's one line. Then have him go to the opposite wall, drop a marker, swing another line across the room. Now you have a cross. We call that cross wall measurement. And from that, it's able to build a three-dimensional sketch of the room. And that happens in 5-10 seconds. So if you're doing a square or rectangular area, right, or as Josh was pointing out earlier, maybe you measured the exterior because you didn't have a sketch, so you have that as you're starting GLA. It's a one-story house. You need to get rid of that garage and mark it as non-GLA and move it out. you can do that so quickly with those cross wall measurements. Makes it super, super fast to do. So those are things we'll train on in some of our upcoming classes. But once you get the hang of it and have a homeowner do it, they get it too. They really learn quickly when they're doing their measurements with you.
A couple measuring questions I see here. Why not concentrate on measurement of the exterior? This does measure the exterior. We're simply showing some interiors where we're taking photographs. We can measure the interior and add on, like for second stories and things, just like we do today. But yeah, it is designed to walk around the exterior. So whether you are creating the shell yourself, let's say for a private lender and they don't have a sketch to give you, okay, and you're just drawing the sketch yourself. Okay, well, you would go around the exterior and measure the exterior. So this is not an interior or exterior device. It is corner to corner. You're getting those measurements, or wall to wall if you were measuring like an interior of a room or a garage or a porch or patio or something. Isn't the homeowner an interested party? Well, a homeowner is an interested party, but they're not providing the information to you. You're gathering this information. This is very different than getting something from them and you didn't witness it and verify it yourself. See, in this case, the verification is being performed by the appraiser. Okay. You
are live, as they say.
Yes. Here's just one example. This actually was an example that we ran into in an illustration we were videoing. We had gotten into a house and we did not know there was going to be part of the wall that had been torn out. So it's not the same as a physical inspection. All right. It's not, but we can still see flaws. It's not to that same degree, right? And that's why there's still going to be full appraisals ordered, because there's high risk, or there's complexities, or they know something already about the property, or you do a remote val and say, client, this wasn't right for this. This wasn't right for this, right? So, but in this case, we were able to see this. We were able to ask questions. We got more details on what was going on with it. Same with special features and things like that. And finally, just an emphasis on being able to communicate with that person. So again, it's not something just being provided to you on a platter and it's static. It is something you're able to interact, right? Okay, so here's our, I think it's our final poll question. Yeah, so there are questions about, well, what if the appraiser, or what if the homeowner doesn't want to do it? Or what if this and that? Well, then it's not right for that assignment. I mean, if the person doesn't want to do that, that's probably a conversation they already had with their loan officer, because they're telling them about this. I mean, I've literally seen communications of how lenders are planning and how they're training people and what they'll say to their borrowers. This isn't going to be a surprise to them. If they don't want it, you back off. You say, all right, let me call the lender, make sure we can change this, and we'll set up a time where I physically visit your property. So here's a poll, though. What type of information must be verified for an appraisal completed on the 1004 desktop form? So that actually relates very well with what we just heard asked. Is no verification of information required, or do you have to verify information provided by interested parties? Let me see if we've got those. Oh, we don't have the, oh, here we go. We do. Okay, so what information must be verified? And we have almost 100%, 97% of folks said you have to verify information that was provided by interested parties. So that is really what we're talking about, especially in that sketch. When someone provides that sketch to you, verifying that information, because in the case where it came from an interested party, which would commonly be, it would be common. Okay. I've gotten questions about ANSI.
Yeah, let's get into that one.
ANSI's the other hot topic out there, right? It is not required for the 1004 desktop because they don't require you to have the interior and exterior inspection. So if you read their new policy of ANSI, it says on forms that require the interior and exterior visit, or however it's worded, like the 1004 traditional, like the 1073 condo and so on and so forth, right? Those must be according to ANSI. Okay. What the 1004 desktop form does require is a floor plan. So those interior wall layouts, not exactly placed. They're not saying, oh, if it's 9.4 feet off the corner, it needs to start at 9.4. That's not what they're saying. They're interested in just getting the general layout with interior walls. Okay. And
which is why seeing it is so important, right? You want to be able to verify,
right.
What are you seeing? And that you can do very quickly with RemoteVal.
Exactly. Another big question is, what are some of my reporting requirements? Because although it's very interesting and novel and, oh, look at my new, I can do this it's something new. I can do it a different way. We still need to understand the mechanics of reporting this, right? We need to not violate USPAP. Even put USPAP aside for a minute. Don't tell anyone I said that, but put USPAP aside, right? In general, we just want to write reports that are clear and not misleading, right? Right. I mean, that's just general. We should want that anyway. So what we're talking about is, first of all, in the development phase, identifying assignment conditions. So we know from the pre-printed form, there's certain expectations. There may be expectations in the selling guide and things like this. There are expectations in our engagement letters. And then we want to make sure we have gathered enough information on the relevant characteristics to make sure we have credible results in the end based on its intended use. Okay. So that's why in certain cases, high risk loans and things, the lender says, oh, no, we're not sending them out, because they also consider something we might consider like an intended use, right? They're looking at different policies and things. And that's why we sort of have different buckets for those different types of inspection spectrums that we just looked at earlier.
Josh, there's a couple of amusing Q&As that came in here. That's why I'm smiling. So I'll give you a few. Oh. First of all, Michelle Bradley calls you out for putting aside USPAP, which is really fun.
Sorry, Michelle.
Oops. And then Kelly Pasek and a couple of others have said, can I ask what part of the country you're in? I apologize if I missed it in the beginning. I'm in Northeast Wisconsin, cold snow, et cetera. I can't imagine homeowners walking around the exterior of some properties that I appraise due to inclement weather, terrain, et cetera. Look, absolutely right. The homeowner should be able to be safe and comfortable during an inspection. So that's a question you should ask. If you get a remote desktop assignment in the middle of Wisconsin in the winter, you might want to ask the lender, hey, can you reach out to the real estate agents and or the borrower and the homeowner and see if you can get me a floor plan from the builder or when they first bought the home, or perhaps like in my case, the real estate agent, the firm that I use, a national firm, they sent no less than 3 people to my property to list my house a few weeks ago. They sent an overhead drone guy, they sent a 3D camera person, and they sent in a realtor appraiser trainee who had a laser and measured my home. So there was a floor plan on the listing, right? You might want to ask that. Maybe that saves everybody some time. But if it's a blizzard, yeah, you might want to maybe ask the homeowner, hey, can we even see your home? Is it going to be buried in snow? Or on top of that, right, is it safe for you to do? And if it's not safe for you to do, then it's okay, right? That we're not here to be prescriptive and try and say that every single appraisal assignment can somehow be shoehorned into a RemoteVal. That's absolutely not, right? Appraisers need to make that call. Homeowners need to make those decisions. I think what we're really looking at here is that there's probably 50 to 70% of homes in the country that can be done pretty well and comfortably with a RemoteVal, either using preset data like a floor plan or just doing it from scratch using RemoteVal's tools. And so what we're saying is use your best judgment, make sure that you're comfortable doing the assignment too as an appraiser, right? We will pivot. And the reason we pay the same fees, at least in our AMC, right, as for a RemoteVal as we do for a regular assignment, is because we want the appraiser to not only be compensated fairly for an appraisal, but we want to be able to have them pivot in case they need to pivot to go to an in-person inspection. So I just want to make sure that that's clear to everyone. And how much is the fee to use RemoteVal? There isn't a fee for appraisers. It's a free tool that we provide. Other companies and AMCs and others that are looking at licensing the technology from us too, that's the preferred model that we're pushing out there, which is it's part of the appraisal cost and the appraisal assignment. So just provide the technology so the appraisers can do it and do it quickly, because that's the win, right? The win for everybody is that it may not take you 11 days or 9 days to do an appraisal. Maybe you can do it in 4 or 5 consistently or less. just because you don't have to drive there. So that's the win for everybody. And people will pay a little extra if they know that's the win at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And just keep in mind, because I think sometimes when we see change, we are afraid that it's instead of this, all of a sudden that's being totally pushed, and now it's something entirely new. There's going to coexist all of these items in that spectrum we looked at, right? We're going to still see full appraisals. There's going to be times where it's that blizzard and you have to schedule it, and now they're not going to walk around in 3 feet of snow, and you say, all right, we're going to do a physical visit. All right. There's going to be times when it's just too complex. If it's a 9,000 square foot house, maybe it's just not a good candidate for that. Now, it could be. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it may not be, right? And so we're not at all proposing or trying to make people believe, because it wouldn't be believable, that all of a sudden full appraisals are out. And that's just simply not. That's simply not going to be the case. But there are a lot of candidates. We looked at them earlier. We know the purchases coming from Fannie Mae. They'll be candidates for that in certain cases. And there's all the fix and flips. There's a lot of that private lending where they're taking a look at and have instituted it at this point. So getting back to the disclosures, we just want to make sure we're reading our forms. I encourage folks, whether I'm teaching USPAP, whether I'm teaching this type of work, whether I'm teaching anything, and where forms come up, I say, reread the forms you've been signing. You might be surprised what you've been signing for 20 years, 15 years, 16 years, whatever those forms, however long they've been around. Right now we have a new form. Well, hold them up against each other and don't just read the new form. Read the old form, right? You can see what has changed, because you're still going to be using the old form, the old expectations, and you're going to be doing some of the new expectations as well. Here's just another sort of reminder here regarding trainee scenarios, right? The supervisor signs. We want to be clear and conspicuous in saying what we did and what we didn't do. Who went out, who did not go out to the property. Okay. We have plenty of time for questions. But if you do have questions after this ends, go ahead and email Incenter. Okay, they'll get routed. You'll get the answer. If you want to ensure you're on their panel for lenders that are doing this in your area for the types of these types of loans, then ask that in the email. Okay.
A couple questions. Janet Riggs, what about comp photos? I haven't heard that mentioned on desktop appraisals. We'll hit that in a second. For those, J. Wade Purdy asked, for those who are late, we'll be able to view a video of this. Yes, this is all being recorded, and Appraisal Buzz will make that available for all of you to watch over and over again. Lenders and AMCs that are using RemoteVal besides us, of course, yeah, we've integrated this into ValueLink. There will be a number of AMCs through that platform as well, and then there's others that are in discussion right now with licensing too. So you'll see more and more of it. I would encourage you in the next probably 30 days, 45 days, attend some of the training that we're going to be doing with it and get familiar with the tools. I think you will see more of it, and this type of technology will just continue to be, whether it's ours or even someone else's at some point, there you'll see more and more of it. So it's just good to be familiar with it. Is this the new UAD form? So I guess, Josh, I'll let you have the form questions, and I think I got everybody else. Why do they want the interior walls now? You'll have to ask that question of Fannie Mae. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. So is it the new UAD form? No, these are not what you might have heard. They're working on new UAD forms or new UAD process where they're adding a lot of different fields and a lot more granular and detailed. This is not that. All right. This is a 1004 desktop. I guarantee you, if you use residential appraisal report writing software, you go into the library or the contents or whatever your software calls it, you're going to see the 1004 desktop in your software. Okay. I'm actually, as we speak, I'm trying to not distract myself too much, but I'm opening up that form so I can hopefully bring it over to the shared screen here, and we can take a look at just one of the nuances that we might look at. And this is, let me see if I can.
And while you do that, I'll mention that's also the Form 70D in the Freddie Mac world, right?
Right.
So same exact form. Also, several of you are asking, do we have RemoteVal or work available now? Yes, you can email that email that was on screen, iamvendormanagement@incenterms.com, and you can sign up there. Make sure you get on our 24-hour pay so that you can be paid quickly. A lot of appraisers like that, but we do the same for traditional appraisals or for remote appraisals. And yeah, we can provide you RemoteVal orders, definitely.
So here's just an example of one of the items we've mentioned in the new form. This is the 1004 desktop, and I'll scroll up to kind of show you some other differences. But here it says, I verified from a disinterested source. In other words, that would be us doing it. We're verifying it. We're looking at it, which was confirmed, in fact, in their fact sheet that Fannie Mae issued. All information in this report that was provided by parties who have a financial interest in the sale or financing of the subject property. So that's what we've been talking about. But if you want to just take a look real quick, it's pretty much the same form. It's very, very similar. You can see it says desktop at the top, of course. Oops, am I not advancing? Here we go. It's the same form. Now there are some additional fields up here. All right, we would say we're using a prior URAR, we're using a prior hybrid, or other. And many times we might be using other. If we're using multiple sources and one option doesn't sort of satisfy everything we've done, you just type about it. Type on that bottom, on the line right below it, right? So there's that section. We also have this where they have included a floor plan. And we had a question over here. Why do they want interior walls now? I think the policy is coming about because they're looking at sort of what's the next step. Where can we do better? Where can we have better data? Where can the user of this appraisal for this loan? Where can how can they understand this property just a little bit better? Right? Sort of what's that next gen reporting that we would look for? I don't know their exact rationale, but that's why they have changed sort of the word from sketch to floor plan. Okay. But take a look at it. Again, open up your software and you're going to see it right there. Hold it up against your other form. As far as the work file,
I was going to say one quick question people have asked, can they actually try it out? Yes. If you sign up for our AMC, and we'll provide you a complimentary RemoteVal account. When we set up our RemoteVal account for you, it will have a dummy order based on your own property address that you have in your profile. So that dummy order lives there forever in your account, and you can use it to actually connect with your phone or somebody else's phone, or use the self-inspection tool to do it on your own phone, or connect with your daughter or your trainee or whoever you want to do that with, and you can actually drive RemoteVal on your own and do it that way. So definitely, as you sign up with us, we'll provide you a way to test it right away, even if we don't have an order for you or you don't want to take an order, you just want to test drive it, no problem.
Right. And so I know there has been question regarding the ability to download video. So we have a question here about, well, how do I save this video? So, and I know that has been sort of in internal discussions as this app and entire technology has progressed. You have access to it. It's being stored. You can go in anytime. You can look at it. And so for work file purposes, referencing the platform there. And also in terms of retention, which I saw much earlier in the Q&A there, retention for it is going to meet USPAP guidelines, and Incenter is also taking a look at what states may have extended longer timeframes for retaining work files. So it would match or exceed the expectations. So you would have it to go back to. So you can reference it. So I guess the short answer is you reference the location of that resource at this point in time. Now, if that decision changes and you can download it and store it yourself, then of course that would also be an option as well. It would be very large in terms of storage, but.
Right. And so let me be clear on that. We can enable a feature for an appraiser to download the video. We're suppressing it right now just because of A, the size considerations, B, the security consideration. And as things evolve and as this technology evolves, as the policies at lenders evolve, we'll definitely revisit that. And appraisers may also have an opinion on that too. So that'd be it wasn't a poll question, but it's one that I would love to hear from you on. If you would be interested in actually downloading the video for yourself to store it for yourself, could you securitize it on your work laptop in the way that it can be when it's stored up in our cloud, for example, right? Do you want the liability of having a video like that in your possession? There's always those things to consider whenever you're doing that. So certainly would love to hear your opinions on that if you wish to email me or provide some context as appraisers on this call. Certainly would love to hear those opinions because it will definitely factor into our future development.
Yeah. There's another question about comp photos. So just keep in mind again, we're talking about the 1004. If we're talking about the 1004 desktop, there are no comp photo requirements in terms of driving your comps. If you're talking about one of the other traditional forms and you're sending out a trainee, then the trainee would fulfill the scope of work that's required by that form that's agreed to with your client. They would drive the comp photos. So the new form doesn't require it. The traditional forms, you would of course meet those requirements, and that would be the trainee experiencing the entire process. So it sort of, they're going to experience every sort of aspect of experience and training that would go into that.
And part of that has to do with the engagement too, depending on the form, right? So when we have a private lender, for example, may not require that. They would say in their engagement letter to you, I want you to inspect the property with RemoteVal, but you can provide verified sources such as MLS comps for me on that form. That's part of the scope of work that they would provide, which you would fulfill.
Good. All right. Jim, do you see have you run across any Q&A that we have not covered? There's just been,
no, you guys have been doing a great job of, doing a great job of answering them as they came through.
Yeah, we're just scrolling through. I think we.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we're at least touching on some of the issues. I mean, there could be some questions that are just not, we just, maybe don't pertain to it or something. But I see Michelle's UsePap comment. Michelle knows I love UsePap, so I would never truly say this. Okay, well, I don't see any new ones. As far as orientation of the phone, here's a nice one. At this point in time, you do hold it. Actually, you have to hold it upright, right? So that's
you can do both. You can do
both.
panorama.
Okay, I have not done it in.
You can do panorama like that, so the homeowner is who you're directing, right? You're telling the homeowner just hold it this way, or I want you to flip it 90 degrees like that, so I can get a wider shot. You can do that.
Good. I'm glad you were here because I was ready to say tell folks wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. If there's anything we haven't answered, ask it again. If we've missed it, jot down this email address so we have we've got your input. As Mark always tells folks, and I guess I won't speak for him. He can share it, but he's always sharing with me. This is always a work in progress. And we want feedback from appraisers. We want feedback from appraisers to see how this it can be used more and better. So, Mark, did you have any? I know something popped up here for everyone to respond.
Yeah, if everyone could sign up, that would be wonderful because we'd love to send assignments to you. And as we grow our lender profile and we obviously want to reach out to you and provide you with work too, both from our traditional lender base as well as our bank base, our new tax appeal services, and all those other things that we're doing to bring additional business into appraisers. So we definitely want to work with you on that. The other thing also is if you'd like to beta test RemoteVal on our next generation, Josh alluded to it, that our measurement capabilities continue to advance. And we have some really amazing stuff coming down the pike here in just a couple of months. So we would love to have some of you guys who are active users of it actually beta test the next generation of measurements so that we can, again, just make it easier and easier and easier for a homeowner to just work with you to scan a property and get the interior measurements as well. So there'll be news on a number of fronts there, and we look forward to having some of you participate in that process too.
Well, thank you all for joining us, and thank you so much, Josh and Mark. I mean, this is great technology. It's amazing what it can do. I know there was a lot of people on here. We had almost 200 people show up, or the 250 that registered. So we're excited. Reach out to Incenter if you have any questions or would like to get signed up to their panel. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Appreciate your time.